Okay, at this time, we have defensive coordinator Zac Alley. Questions for Coach Alley? Great.
This is Zach. This past week during the open week, what did you concentrate on as you self-scouted? What mistakes were you making and try to get corrected?
Yeah, eye control is our first thing. Reading our keys. I mean, there's quite a few opportunities where, you look in the backfield, you're going to make, you're not going to make any plays. And I think sometimes that's probably the inverse of what the guys think. They think, hey, if I see the ball and I go get the ball, well, you got to play within the system to make the ball come to you. And so that's been a big focus. And then tackling, as well. Those are kind of been the two things we focused on is knowing what to do, what my key tells me to do, doing it efficiently and fast, and then being able to make the play when you get there.
They didn't seem to make those same mistakes earlier in the year. So is that a new bad habit, or is it something they sort of skated through?
Yeah, I think it probably skated through more than anything. We were able to work through some of those things the first couple of weeks and still find a way to win. And as I said, as you play better people, as the year goes on, they're going to expose that more. Because even then you'll get competitive plays where you are in the right place and you have to make those, and they'll win some of those because they're on scholarship too. And so just the emphasis has got to be to consistently do it every single play because just one time not doing your job can give up a touchdown.
Unknowns, obviously Jackson, I guess you have to plan on him. How do they look without him? What are they doing? Similar stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're fairly similar depending on, which guy's playing back there. I think they actually, all three of them are pretty good players. But they do similar things with all of them. They're going to run him a little bit more probably at quarterback than they will depending on who's in the game. So it just depends on, that from how much quarterback run game you get. But overall, the offense is fairly similar with all three guys in there. I think they've got the tailbacks are both really good. They run downhill and they play hard. I think they've got great team speed. I think the receivers are fast. Number 9's a dude. They use 7 a bunch of different ways. They, handing the ball, tossing the ball, throwing the ball, shoveling the ball. So they're going to find ways to get the ball, in his hands and let him make plays because they've got, good speed and on the edges and the perimeter.
Rich talked about the dealing with mobile quarterbacks and the struggles of the defense, handling mobile quarterbacks and bringing them down. What can be done without changing personnel to fix that, improve on dealing with mobile quarterbacks, and what do you think's been the main issue with dealing with a mobile quarterback this year?
Yeah, I think the first thing's just been tackling, getting him on the ground. We've had quite a few, opportunities where he's in the pocket to make plays unblocked, and you got to come under balance and not be out of control to make that. Then, you try and twist and stunt the D-line and fill those gaps up inside and not let guys step up in the pocket and move where they want to. So, try and create lanes to force them to go where you want to go and then have somebody there to come get them from, that standpoint.
You mentioned their perimeter speed. Are you expecting to take some shots?
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I think the offense is predicated on that. You see it as just as a whole. They're gonna set it up. They're gonna run the ball to set up the deep play action shot off of it, and see if they can take the top off. And you get 2-3 of them a quarter. They're gonna, no matter what, here comes deep post, and they're gonna throw it. To just try and see if they can get a one-on-one or a PI. Every counts that as a win nowadays. So that's something they definitely like to do, and I anticipate they will do. Just across the board to just test to make sure you're doing your job back there and playing with depth.
Zach, from a defensive perspective, were you doing more evaluation during the bye week, or were you doing more teaching, such as trying to help these guys understand a little bit more what to expect coming forward?
Yeah, I think more teaching. I told them we got to go back to focus on us. We made a lot of mistakes that have been forced by us, and not by somebody else. And so that's the key for me is trying to get guys to just do their job, and do your 1/11th every play and have a chance to play great defense that way. And it's hard to overcome as you play better people if you don't do your job consistently. If you play teams who can't block you, sure, you can get out of gaps and that's fine. But once you start to play teams that have good players and have the ability to execute and are going to move and make you adjust and try and test your discipline, you have to stay with that. So we've focused on that the last 2 weeks of just how do we consistently do our job, where do our eyes go, and then put ourselves in position to make the tackle.
How does it feel that when you're trying to implement this defense that against a ranked team you forced 3 turnovers after a couple weeks, you didn't really have any?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's good, but we didn't make a punt, so it's a relative across the board type of thing. For me, we try and give ourselves opportunities. Obviously, the confusion, we punch at the ball a lot. I think that's something that we try and emphasize, and we have the last couple of weeks of forcing fumbles, trying to get them out. And that showed up against BYU, but we were, just unable to capitalize, on the other drives and getting guys off the field on 3rd and 4th down. And so that doesn't create momentum. And so that's kind of the keys. We got to keep those turnovers, but we've also got to get the offense off the field when we have an opportunity on 3rd down.
Morgan Robinson, obviously, he's played a few games now. How badly do you need him to become a playmaker for you?
Yeah, I think we need Jamori to show up on the edge and be a dude. That he's shown he can be, and come back and execute and do the things that it takes to be successful. Do your job and get after people, every single play, and that comes from getting in shape and being able to, both, know what to do and execute it in the time when your key tells you what to do as well.
Which is more frustrating as a defensive coordinator? Team that, and you've had both happen this year, team get like 30 first downs, or team get 4 or 5 plays of 40 or more yards?
Probably the first downs, because you don't give it an opportunity for the offense to get the ball. As you force them to get off the field, you get the ball back for the offense, and that leads to touchdowns and scoring, and that's how you play complementary football. You're going to give up an explosive here or there, and you can overcome that. You go for a 40-yard pass, stop them on the 5, and hold them to a field goal, you can overcome. But you let them consistently put 13, 14, 15 play drives together and not get off the field. You don't help yourself get the ball back to the offense, and they still end up coming away with points. And so I would say probably the first downs.
Is the big difference first down and tackling more than anything else done?
Absolutely.
Team controlling the ball?
Yeah, you got to win on 1st and 2nd down. If you consistently end up in 2nd and 2 and 3rd and 1, you're not going to win the majority of those. I mean, statistics tell you that. Across the country, 3rd and 1, the offense wins the majority of the time because they only got to get 1 yard. Whereas 3rd and 10, they don't win, but 12% of the time. So, that's something that we've got to do a better job of on 1st and 2nd down, which goes back to reading those keys and tackling to give yourself a chance to get off the field on 3rd and long. And then that also provides the opportunity to get sacks and rush the passer and force turnovers.
How much can you do schematically to help you out on the line of scrimmage? I know the last BYU and Utah, it's kind of unique the way how good they were up front, but what can you do?
Yeah, you try and make them single block everybody, and hopefully when you do that, you can make plays in the backfield. So you try to create, 5-6 man pressures where they can only block one guy, with one guy, and then at least keep them from putting 600 pounds on one person, at a time. So the more of that you can get to, the easier it is to be able to, hold point in there. So I'd say that's probably the first answer is, blitz somebody and take a double team off of an interior guy.
Kind of dilute them a little bit?
Yeah, force them to block an athlete in space and, see if you can get vertical penetration and slow the ball down and make it go, east and west.
What's been the collective mood just in regards to your defensive players after allowing 30 or more points in all of your Big 12 contests at this point? What's the mood? What's the energy level like going into this week?
I felt it's been pretty good. I think they understand that, it's a lot of what we've done and that if we fix our issues, that we have an opportunity to go out and play a good game this week, and you got to learn from the first 6 games, but at the same time, like, we've got to do better, and it started with second half, and nothing like halftime, man. The score in the first half doesn't matter, and so we have an opportunity with 6 games left in the season, guaranteed that we can improve, and we want to see that improvement, and I think our guys are bought into that, and they kind of understand where the issues have been, and just trying to figure out the fundamentals of playing the game the way it's supposed to be played.
Zach, how much, I guess maybe cat and mouse would be the phrase, is there you watching a team their prior 4 games and something they've struggled with that habitually their opponents have done? They can't handle it, they can't block this, whatever. And then conversely, maybe you have to cover up a little bit too because it's happened to you and, okay, 3 teams have attacked us on this. Does that happen, or is that just kind of a cliche fan armchair analysis thing?
Yeah, no, I think that definitely happens. A good coordinator on either side of the ball is going to expose things. I always call it, it's professional courtesy to see if you fix that. And so we're going to do it again to see if you've solved that problem. And I think we do that, and so the other teams do it to us. So we work those, we work them in practice, things that we've struggled with before, and maybe plays we've given up, and try and make sure we're ready to execute them if they show back up again.
like trying to work on tackling during a bye week, but not overdo it at this point in the season when you're already somewhat banged up?
Yeah. I don't know if overdoing it's a thing. So we're going to work on it and be physical and try and get dudes down. And, you know, if you can't tackle nobody, everything else doesn't really matter. So, you know, the guys who were healthy that could go, you know, we were going to bang heads and get ready to play.
Rich talked about after the BYU game that he challenged the staff even to ask themselves if they're doing everything possible to win right now, regardless of circumstance. Number one, do you feel like you and your whole staff below you are, and what can be done, and how did you take that challenge from him even amongst the defensive staff?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it's always good to reassess the things you're doing, see if there's better ways to do things and to teach, you know, and so we've done that and we've looked at it. You know, I feel like our guys, you know, both my coaches, myself, our players too, have, you know, bought into that work and what it looks like to be able to execute the right way. And to teach the right way and to give them extra and do more. And, you know, I believe the staff's bought into that and has continued to try and do that as much as we can.
Style-wise, UCF, can you put them in a category of maybe similar to Kansas or Cincinnati? How would you group them?
Yeah, you know, I think they're a blend of a couple teams, probably somewhere between a Kansas and a BYU maybe, as far as the, you know, schematically what they do. You know, like I said, they've got good team speed on the edges, which is something that's, you know, presents a challenge comparatively maybe to some other people. But you know, probably a blend of those two teams, and you know, as we alluded to earlier, I'm sure we'll see some plays from those games.
Okay, thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks, guys.